To invite first Vice President of the European Commission, Commissioner Frans Timmermans, to address us today.
First of all, I want to really thank you for inviting me to speak here today. It is, certainly after the words of Ambassador Selal, an impressive gathering of people of goodwill. You know, whenever in European history things tend to go wrong in Europe, Jews are always the first target. In that sense, I agree with Ambassador Selal when he says there is a new form of anti-Semitism in Europe. But it falls into fertile ground of European history, and it interacts with classical anti-Semitism that unfortunately is still present on our continent and within the European Union. In a sense, during the ages, the Jewish community was always the first indication of trouble ahead for European societies. The first signs of anti-Semitism, the first pogrom, the first persecution of Jews, it always led to a greater tragedy in Europe. So in that sense, fighting anti-Semitism, fighting intolerance, fighting hatred of who is different, is the essential fight for the peaceful nature of European society. I refuse to not see the link between classical anti-Semitism and what is happening today in Europe. And I would call on everyone who has any responsibility in European society to show what the Germans call Zivilcourage, civic courage, to give an answer to this threat in civil action. Yes, we in the European Commission will take our responsibility. Yes, governments will take their responsibility. But this is a responsibility that needs to be shared by societies, by communities, by individual citizens. If the European idea is to survive, if the European Union is to survive, it will not happen because the euro is strong or the internal market functions or we have better regulation. It will only happen if it is based on the assumption and the acceptance of the fact that for every community that belongs in Europe, there is a place in Europe. The most disturbing news I got recently, which quite literally keeps me awake at night, is that the Jewish community in France, the Jewish community in the United Kingdom, when asked, in majority says, we don't know if there is a future for us in Europe. If there is no future for Jews in Europe, there is no future for Europe. And it is our task to assure that every single person who belongs to this continent, whether they are Christian, Jewish, Muslim, atheist, Buddhist, I don't care. But for everyone there should be a place and a feeling of belonging and a feeling of safety. And if we have to do justice to those again in Paris who were targeted, like earlier in Brussels, because they were Jews and for no other reason, if we are to do justice to their memory, we have to take up this responsibility for a society that can only exist if we are tolerant, if we accept difference. We don't have to be like each other. We can even enjoy the differences between our communities. But we have to reconnect with what Albert Camus called an essential human characteristic which distinguishes us from animals, which is to be able to look at the world through somebody else's eyes. And if we forget that, we fall into the trap of the fanatics who refuse to accept that there can be any other vision on the world than their vision, and who see in their fanaticism a justification to eradicate everyone who is different. if we don't step up our activities to avoid that logic to take hold in Europe, the European Union, the European project, the European ideal is doomed. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we have a moral duty, the duty of civility, a political duty, to bring about the situation as soon as possible that not one Jew in Europe feels the urge to leave Europe because he or she sees no future for them on this continent. Taking away the Jews from Europe is taking away Europe's soul. It has been done before. And the answer that we now call European Union and European integration was an answer to that threat. That is why we have European integration. Not for economic reasons, but for this reason. To avoid the mistakes we as Europeans collectively made in the past. And 70 years after the liberation of Auschwitz, it should be our greatest duty to prevent the ghosts and the demons of the past to return. Let's do this for the poor victims who fell due to hatred in Paris. Thank you. Ani Yehudi.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. We heard the call. We are the civic society and we're on board. Count on us. Really. As we say, words must lead to action. I would like to personally thank the European Jewish Association for continuously fighting for Jewish rights in Europe. I would like to invite Rabbi Menachem Margolin, General Director of the European Jewish Association, to share with us a few words.